Good evening. You're watching the News at 6 with me, Ishan Russell. The News at 6 is all about the day's biggest developing stories, and we will be filling in on them over the next half hour, including a discussion on the national encryption policy. That controversy erupted and the government's been forced to withdraw that policy. But what is the fallout of that? We'll be discussing that with a special guest as well. But first, the headlines that we're tracking right now. After a massive public outcry, the government backtracks, withdraws draft document on national encryption policy. Ahead of Prime Minister's visit to the US, Cabinet clears multi-billion-dollar deal for 22 Apache attack helicopters and 15 Chinook choppers with Boeing. Sensex registered the third biggest fall of the month, loses 550 points amid steep losses in Europe and lingering growth concerns. On the third front, led by the Samajwadi Party, holds a rally in Patna. Uttar Pradesh Chief Minister Akhilesh Yadav lashes out at the centre for making false promises. Well, our top story this evening. Ahead of Prime Minister Narendra Modi's visit to the US, the cabinet cleared the decks for a multi-billion-dollar deal for 22 Apache attack helicopters and 15 Chinook choppers with US aviation giant Boeing. Now, the deal is the first big military contract for the US since Prime Minister Modi's government took office. But there's a lot more riding on the PM's second visit to the US within a year.
Soon after the first India-US strategic and commercial dialogue, Prime Minister Narendra Modi will begin his second visit to the US. Apart from attending the UN General Assembly session in New York, Modi will meet US investors and President Barack Obama and also visit the West Coast, known for its famous startups. US seeks to strengthen economic ties with India, hoping it would transform into a global powerhouse soon.
We've seen recently a major report put out by the Peterson Institute that talks about what is at stake for India and how much India can grow and benefit through trade liberalization.
I think the U.S. is expecting India to play a stronger role, especially in the Asia-Pacific region. That's our area of focus.
The relationship between U.S. and India is full of hope and opportunity. I see us having a lot of partnerships in the future, both around our economies, around creating a stable Asia, and also in science.
Modi will host a summit of G4 leaders in New York, where the main agenda will be the United Nations Security Council reforms. The US has acknowledged that it has disagreement with India over the process of the reforms. However, it is committed to India's inclusion as a permanent member.
Well, you know, the president has reiterated on multiple occasions that the United States welcomes and supports India's entry into a reformed Security Council, and we stand behind the president's words.
Willingly or unwillingly, this year UN has to undertake the Security Council reform on its major agenda. And in this way, this is one of the most important visits of Prime Minister Narendra Modi to USA, because India will have to do comprehensive lobbying among the member nations of the UN. Akhilesh Suman for Sabha television in Delhi.
At the first ever Indo-US strategic and commercial dialogue, External Affairs Minister Sushma Swaraj said that India's growth story has immense potential for American businesses. India showed full support to the US to help boost commerce and trade ties. The US, on its part, asked India to speed up its reform process to facilitate the ease of doing business.
The Indian delegation, led by External Affairs Minister Sushma Swaraj, sought investments from the US industry in both public and private sectors. Addressing the inaugural US-India strategic and commercial dialogue, Swaraj said the two sides were also strengthening mutual cooperation in areas like defense and security, clean energy and environment. She listed out a number of initiatives taken up by the centre where US can invest and help develop infrastructure. Key projects like the smart cities and cleaning up of Ganga feature among them.
We want to connect manufacturing in India with global supply chains and target to develop product-based and service-based industrial and governance platforms around digital India. All of these initiatives and plans present real commercial and business opportunities for the US industry to partner with Indian public and private sector and with our larger economy for a win-win outcome.
US Vice President termed the first strategic and commercial dialogue as beginning of a new era in Indo-US ties. However, he said that India needs to speed up the pace of economic reforms with special emphasis on ease of doing business.
We will do everything we can to support Prime Minister Modi's ambitious economic reforms and his understanding that no nation should have to choose between prosperity and sovereignty.
The excitement that was reflected last January on Republic Day, when President Obama became the first American to be welcomed as the chief guest, was really extraordinary. And there were times when such an honor for a U.S. official would have been simply unfathomable.
India is committed to reform, but we always calibrate reform with the ground reality. I'm sure the efforts of the Modi government to bring about change for ease of business, to bring about change to make the lives of the people better, for energy access, affordable housing, all of these are also a part of reform.
US also sought greater cooperation on the issue of climate change. Biden hopes it would unleash a new era of economic growth in the two largest democracies of the world. Kerry expressed support for Modi's plan to help Indian economy become more reliant on renewable sources of power. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
On news from the stock markets now, and Indian shares fell more than 2% today, tracking a steep fall in European equities. Today's loss is the Sensex's third biggest fall this month. In fact, the Sensex shed all its gains to trade 500 points down. The Nifty tanked over 150 points as well. According to experts, the huge sell-off today was triggered by developments in Europe, where stocks in Britain, France and Germany slumped between 2 to 3%. European shares have also been weighed down by the crash in Volkswagen, which fell nearly 20% today. The German auto giant Volkswagen admitted that its diesel cars sold worldwide are equipped with devices that can cheat pollution tests.
A huge selling pressure in the markets. The reason being that currently we are not going through some good times as far as markets are concerned. The volatility of the market is very high. And there are various reasons moving around in the market. Chinese numbers again today have come out which are not so good. So in all, there are various factors, but the fact is that sentiment is very weak.
Now, Indian markets were also impacted by the European markets, and again, the F&O settlement is quite close. So in India, investors perhaps don't want to take risk by buying very closer to the last day of the settlement. Indian corporates also have not been performing too well.
Now, with the battle for Bihar heating up, the third front, led by the Samajwadi Party, held a rally in Patna today. Uttar Pradesh Chief Minister Akhilesh Yadav held the rally and lashed out at the state government and the BJP for making false promises. This was the first visit by any SP leader to the poll-bound state.
Uttar Pradesh Chief Minister Akhilesh Yadav was in Patna today, where he addressed a joint function of workers of the Samajwadi Party, the NCP and other parties. The alliance is being touted as the third front.
नेताजी का धन्यवाद दूंगा, कैमरा नंदा जी का भी धन्यवाद दूंगा कि उन्होंने कम से कम एक मंच पे लाने का काम किया है। सवाल ये नहीं है कि गठबंधन क्या है, महागठबंधन किसका है, लेकिन अगर पांचों उंगलियों को एक साथ जोड़ने का काम नेताजी ने किया तो बहुत बड़ा काम हुआ।
After his party exited the Nitish Lalu-led Grand Alliance over seat sharing, this was the first visit by any Samajwadi Party leader to the poll-bound state.
बहुत बड़े-बड़े सपने दिखाए गए, मैंने सुना कि बहुत बड़े सपने दिखाए गए, और ऐसे सपने, ऐसे अच्छे दिनों के सपने जिसकी कोई कल्पना नहीं कर सकता, क्योंकि जमाना बदला है, मार्केटिंग और ब्रांडिंग का जमाना है। कोई कंपनी तय कर देती कि अच्छे दिन ऐसे आ सकते हैं, तो तय कर लिया उन्होंने कि अच्छे दिन ऐसे आएंगे। वो उस पार्टी का नारा नहीं था, और मार्केटिंग वाली कंपनी का नारा था।
Samajwadi Party had teamed up with 5 parties to contest as third front in the upcoming assembly polls. The alliance worked out a seat-sharing pact last week with SP contesting on 85 seats. NCP will contest on 40 seats, whereas Papu Yadav's outfit JAM will fight 64 constituencies.
चुनाव लड़ने दीजिए, जनता का आशीर्वाद लेने दीजिए, जनता हम लोग को आशीर्वाद करेंगे, बैठ के हम लोग 1 मिनट में हम लोग का लीडर ठीक कर देंगे।
जिस उद्देश्य के लिए गठबंधन बना है, उस उद्देश्य की प्राप्ति हम कर सके। एक मजबूत तीसरा विकल्प बिहार की जनता को हम देंगे, और आने वाले समय में आप इस बात को महसूस करेंगे कि जो हम लोग वादा करेंगे, जो हमारा चाहे वो घोषणा पत्र हो या विजन पेपर हो, उस पेपर को लेकर जो हम जाएंगे उसको हम लोग पूरा करेंगे। अगर बिहार की जनता ने हम पर विश्वास किया, हमको आशीर्वाद दिया, तो हम उसको पूरा करेंगे।
Among the smaller alliance partners, SSP, headed by former Union Minister Nagmani, has been allotted 28 seats. Former Lok Sabha MP DP Yadav's newly floated electoral outfit, SJDD, is allotted 23 constituencies to contest, and the remaining 3 seats are left for former Parliament Speaker P. S. Sangma's NPP. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
Time for us to take a very quick break. Coming up on the other side, after triggering controversy, the government withdraws draft proposal on encryption policy. We'll discuss the issue on the other side in detail.
The splendid cultural heritage of Mysuru, amid the grand architecture and royal pageantry, the brilliance of the Mysore University. Has University of Mysore turned 100? Watch our special report on this treasured institution, only on Rajya Sabha television.
Political slugfest intensifies in Bihar. Regional leaders fight a do-or-die battle. Who wins Bihar and who loses relevance? Watch Verdict 2015 on Rajya Sabha television.
Tradition dating back centuries. A cultural heritage that inspires and warms at once. Magic that awes. Rajya Sabha television brings you events that embrace the wonders of India's classical arts. Conversations with the biggest names in the culture and music. Rajya Sabha television, democracy at work.
Welcome back. You're watching the news at 6. On to our focus story for now. The government has withdrawn its draft encryption policy after a huge public outcry. Telecom Minister Ravi Shankar Prasad clarified it was just a draft and not a policy decision. A fresh draft will be issued soon. Now, the original proposal said that apps and platforms will have to either register the encryption service they use with the government or sign up to use government-approved services.
After a very public uproar, the government has taken a step back. Just hours after announcing a draft encryption policy, the government has withdrawn it.
Yesterday, it was brought to my notice that the draft has been put in public domain seeking comments. I wish to make it very clear that that is just a draft, not the view of the government. But I have noted some of the concerns expressed by certain enlightened segment of the public.
The original draft stated that every message a user sends, whether it was through WhatsApp, SMS, email or other social media apps, must be mandatorily stored in plain text format for 90 days. The draft also said that these must be made available on demand to security agencies.
The right of articulation and freedom we fully respect. At the same time, we need to acknowledge that the cyberspace transaction is rising enormously. For individual, for businesses, for government, for company to company.
The clarification that's come from the ministry is a step in the right direction. It's a recognition of the fact that there were some intrinsic problems in the draft encryption policy, and that's why the proposed exemptions have been granted. But while the exemptions have been so granted, the intrinsic problems in the policy, draft policy, still remain.
If you have encrypted data, which is secure, which is protected in a way that hackers cannot hack it, you have to store a plain text copy so that if the security agencies want to access it, they can ask you for it and access it. The problem with that is that because you're storing a plain text copy, you are actually less secure.
All modern messaging services, including WhatsApp, Viber, Line, Google Chat, Yahoo Messenger and others, come with a high level of encryption which security agencies find hard to intercept. The draft policy proposed to bring these under its purview. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
And we're joined by Ramanjeet Singh Cheema. He is the Global Policy Director at Access. That's an international NGO that works for digital rights. So in terms of digital rights, Raman, it's come down to that kind of a conversation because the government's withdrawn the draft policy. But in terms of what the government's been thinking, and given the larger policy issues that the government has faced over many issues such as net neutrality to porn ban, in terms of a larger mindset, questions being raised about the government.
So I think firstly, we need to commend the fact that the government's looked at the response to the draft policy document. They said that we need to look at this more carefully. And I think that's where we need to see now what happens next. Who do they talk to? Because as they mentioned, we're going to work on the policy and then bring it back. The ministers made it very clear that they do want to talk about encryption. They do want to engage in that frank policy dialogue. So I think it's critical for us to now see as to what happens with this document, who all are asked to even provide inputs to it within government to advise them on this. And it's been a document that's been worked on for some time. The provision of the IT Act relating to this was amended back in 2008. So it's been quite some time since the original law was passed. I think what people are keen to make sure is that the government recognizes the realities of what's there right now. People think this is strongly linked to not just their rights to free expression and privacy, but even their right to be secure and safe online. Right. Encryption is critical to digital security, so I think people wanted to see that realization there in the government document and were then a bit worried when the government said in the draft, or rather, let me put it this way, the draft said that digital security encryption is important, but it still wanted to restrict and regulate encryption.
All right, but as far as this entire debate, because I want to take this conversation to a larger issue, because given the fact that the government's already withdrawn this, but the larger issue still remains of privacy versus national security, and in the lack of a larger cyber law or cyber security law that we don't have, given other countries have it, we don't even in fact have a right to privacy law. But all these factors combining to make it a little bit of a difficult situation for the government, and the government really will have to fold up its sleeves and take real hard policy decisions, and covering an entire gamut that it's possibly not even looking at right now.
No, it's true. It's a tough issue, but I think many other countries also we've seen that they don't necessarily try and pass separate, completely holistic cybersecurity laws that don't look at what's there previously. When they do try and do that, in fact, for example, at Access, we've commented and criticized such efforts because they tend to often look at only one part of the problem and not the larger solution. And I think that's what people are cognizant of here. We must not just look at privacy and other things like that, but we must see how it protects digital security. For example, encryption is now ubiquitous. Everyone uses it. Your phone, your computer has some form on it. You want to strengthen it. In fact, for law enforcement, you want people to be using secure communications because otherwise any everyday criminal or hacker could intrude on your systems, leaving aside completely, say, state-sponsored attacks. So you want your everyday communication to be secure, and that's the real realization here. And I think that's the conversation many people would like to see and would like to see in the new policy document when it comes out, that it notes that encryption is key for digital security and strengthening that actually helps strengthen our nation's security.
All right, so you're saying that the flip side to this is the fact that there is at least a conversation that is going on about digital security, and indeed that the government is thinking in the right direction. There might be hiccups along the way, there might be debates over net neutrality in this and porn ban, but in the larger policy framework, the government is in step with what needs to be done.
I think we're all at least hoping for that, and I think the fact that they've considered that, look, we've seen public opinion, we've seen concerns on this, we want to do it right, that's a step to applaud. Of course, I think all of us are waiting for the actual steps on this, and I think what many people are keen to see is that that whatever government measures are done there actually strengthen the sort of rights and the sort of everyday protection that people want to see happen in this space. I think reality on the encryption situation is that people were troubled to see this come out there. For the idea that we still need to regulate it, that there needs to be a compromise made. And I think what we need to recognize here and see in this policy, as well as in other measures about technology and government public policy, that we want to empower people. And in the case of encryption, we want to realize that strong encryption is equal to strong security for us. It's a strong empowerment of Indians and is as such the Indian national policy. I think we're waiting to see that, and I hope to see that in this document when it finally comes out again for public comments.
All right, so we'll have to wait and watch what the government does in this particular policy, but thank you very much for coming in and helping us understand this issue a little better. And on that note, we'll move on for now, and we'll get you a little more news and updates from around the country nationwide. Home Minister Rajnath Singh left Leh by road to visit the line of actual control on the India-China border today. Besides some Home Ministry and district officials, Rajnath Singh is accompanied by the Director General of the Indo-Tibetan Border Police, Krishna Chaudhary. The Home Minister arrived in Jammu on Monday on a 3-day visit to the international border and the line of actual control in Jammu and Kashmir. BSP Supremo Mayawati today targeted the BJP-led government over the CBI's decision to question her on the multi-crore NRHM scam. She claims she had no connection with it and that the centre was misusing the agency ahead of the Bihar Assembly elections for political gains. Meanwhile, CBI Director Anil Sinha said that the agency will proceed as per requirement in the NRHM scam probe. CBI had called Mayawati yesterday for examination. The Haryana government has agreed to postpone the ongoing Panchayat elections until the Supreme Court decides on the validity of the educational qualifications of the contestants. The Election Commission will come out with a fresh election notification only after the Apex Court takes a decision on the petition on the issue. The final hearing is on the 7th of October. Well, time now for some international news. And a day after Alexis Tsipras was sworn in as Greek Prime Minister, the European Union said that the country should now focus on economic reforms. Tsipras met the Greek president ahead of forming the coalition government. He assured the new government will focus on discussions with international lenders for debt relief.
Alexis Tsipras taking oath as the Greek Prime Minister, breaking from the common practice of doing it in the presence of religious leaders. He pledged to pull out Greece from its debt crisis.
Λίγες μέρες, ένα μήνα σχεδόν, στο μέγαρο το πρωθυπουργικό, το μέγαρο Μαξίμου, έχοντας την ανάμνηση μιας δύσκολης εποχής πίσω μου, μιας σκληρής διαπραγμάτευσης.
European Union leaders said Tsipras now has a mandate to carry out the reforms the country agreed with its international creditors in July.
It was under the leadership of Alexis Tsipras that Greece already committed to an ambitious program of reforms. The new government will now have the mandate to carry out these reforms. As in the past, the Commission and President Juncker stand ready to help.
The Greek Prime Minister also consulted the right-wing nationalist independent Greeks with whom a coalition government will be formed, besides meeting former ministers to discuss cabinet positions. Apart from the debt talks and an €86 billion commitment, Tsipras has one more task at hand. He will attend his first international summit on Wednesday in Brussels to discuss the migrant crisis, in which Greece plays a central role. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
Time now for all the sports action and sports speed. India's under-16 football team qualified for the 2016 AFC Championship after they finished as one of the 4 best runners-up of the group stages and qualifiers. India are the hosts of the 2016 AFC Championships, but the team defeated higher-ranked nations Bahrain and Lebanon to enter the main round of the competition on merit. India have been seeded number 1 in the world in the Davis Cup Group 1 Asia-Oceania zone despite losing a World Group playoff against the Czech Republic. The tournament is scheduled to be held in March next year. Uzbekistan have been seeded 2nd in the zone and the 2 countries will get the first round byes. The other teams in the group are China, South Korea, New Zealand and Pakistan. Unknown assailants shot dead a national-level shooter, Sippy Sidhu, in Chandigarh on Monday night. His body was recovered from a park with bullet injuries. Police suspect it was a case of contract killing, ruling out robbery as a motive. Sidhu had been on the shooting circuit for more than 15 years and had won the team gold along with Abhinav Bindra in the Punjab National Games in 2001. And that's all from us. Goodbye.